that we become entrepreneurs, there's many different ways. My model is inch by inch, step by step, be incremental with it. Forgive the term, don't quit your day job, but have that thing that feeds you if you can. And every minute that you are not at that thing, you will be working on your whatever the thing is, your world of entrepreneurship.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Small Town Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Claire Bouvier, and today we have a very incredible special guest who's going to dive deep into a topic that every entrepreneur, big or small, grapples with: anxiety. Anxiety that comes with running a business, building a business, starting a business, and how we can really protect our mental well-being and especially our sleep. And for those of you that have gotten to know me, I have had, for as long as I know, ADHD. Wasn't diagnosed till I was 30, but the importance of protecting our well-being and our mental health is super important to the role of building a business. So I am so excited today to bring on Rachel Fleischman. I am so excited to introduce Rachel Fleischman, an international renowned psychotherapist, a workshop leader, a dance facilitator with over 25 years of experience in the field. She is the founder of Dance Your Bliss, a revolutionary program that combines psychotherapy and movement and has helped people who have felt disconnected from their bodies to feel whole and alive again. From teaching at Stanford University to a Salem Institute, Rachel has made a substantial impact in both the academic and holistic health realms. Her work has been featured in esteemed publications like The Good Therapy, Elephant Journal, Women First, and Psychology Today. We are so excited to have you, Rachel. Welcome to the Small Town Entrepreneur Podcast.
Rachel, welcome to the Small Town Entrepreneur Podcast. I am so delighted to have you here, especially for those of you listening. Good heavens, you think technology is supposed to make our lives easier? I will tell you, we tried to do a live Facebook streaming. That seemed to be more complicated. Anyway, here we are. You're so patient. And from what I know, it's super hot over in San Francisco. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Claire. I love that your name is Claire Bouvier. We were talking about names offline a moment ago, and I'm saddened that some people don't pronounce your name right. Do they say Bouvier? I mean, I just have to ask.
I get everything.
Okay. Well,
yes, I get everything.
Okay.
It's okay. You know what?
Okay.
I can say I've butchered a couple names in my day. So that is okay. I usually Claire, they don't screw up. So
right. They got that.
And Rachel's a great name. I have a sister, Rachel. So
lovely.
Yes.
Lovely. Love my
Love
name.
it.
Well, I am thrilled to be here. I've been listening to your podcasts and I love your enthusiasm and love learning that you are a classical violinist. And many things about you. You've lived in Taiwan. You probably speak several languages, just a guess.
I love languages, but I'm not fluent. I wouldn't say no, but at one point I was in Spanish. It's sad. I've lost a lot of it. You got to really immerse yourself.
Yes, you do. So we're here to talk about, well, for your listeners, first of all, awesome that you are a listener because Claire Bouvier brings it. She brings a lot of passion and love. You're generous. You're generous. You're a generous podcaster. So I want to be generous and try to jam pack in our short time.
Yes.
Every actionable that I can for listeners. So I will start with just a question for you. And then of course I have lots of ideas.
I love it. I love this.
I guess the question is, what is something you get asked about or something you have experienced as an entrepreneur that just bugs the heck out of you or is the thing you hear again and again or experience again and again?
In regards to, so today's podcast, we're going to be focused on, well, the topic of anxiety. You can call it anything, whatever the word is. Some people, I call it my Tina. Tina comes out.
Oh, Tina. That's not a bad name for it. Okay.
Tina comes out and Tina's a little cray-cray. You're asking me rephrase it. Sorry.
Let me backtrack.
Let
me backtrack. I'm going to change the script because that is not where I'm going to start. Whoop.
I love that.
Put it back. Folks, you're seeing this in real time. I want to talk a little bit about anxiety. We humans, as a species and a race, we need to survive, right? So we have in us an inner joy system that loves music and dance and play, and an inner threat system and many other systems. I'm simplifying it. And the threat system is the part of us that does not want to get hurt, does not want to get caught, does not want to be shamed, does not want to die alone, poor, with no teeth in our mouth, et cetera, et cetera. So our threat system has gotten very overactive. Obviously, for a species to stay afloat, we need to run away when there's danger. That's why we feel that surge that we feel of fear. Even today, just coming home, there was just this tiny little smart car that I didn't expect to see at a crosswalk. And my system zipped, right? You know, Claire, it just did that little zip. How great, not pleasant, but how great that zip exists to move us, you know, to bring blood to the extremities and move us quickly.
Healthy anxiety, I call it.
Right, healthy anxiety.
Tina.
So we will talk about healthy Tina with a little T and a heart on the I, and then we'll talk about the terrible Tina. And what I want to talk about is that anxiety is a sign that we are alive. Let's talk about the positives. It's a sign that we care about something. It's a sign that something matters to us. But it's often giving us incorrect information. So anxiety that says my mailing list is really small, let's say I'm being an entrepreneur, got this small mailing list and I'm not great, let's say with technology. And that's going to mean that I'm never, ever going to make money. No, that's not actually correct math. It means let's sit down and grow your mailing list. And if that's important to you. Yeah. So what I think we need to do as people, and the entrepreneur, the listener knows this, but let's remember it, is listen and ask the anxiety, which part of you do I want to take in to ground me and energize me? And which part can I say bye-bye to? And like, right, Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, also wrote a book called Big Magic.
Love that book. That's the book I read.
Yes.
When I was in Chiang Mai in Thailand, and I was telling everyone, I bought it for like all my friends.
Yep. You are a good friend. Thank you for reminding me. That is something I should do. I do that sometimes with books that I love. That is a great thing. So listeners, it is the best $16 you ever bought. Try to get a hard copy because you're going to want to write in it.
Also, can I throw in something? The audio, she reads it.
I did. Yes. Yep. You're right. I did both.
For me,
you know what? I do both. When I fall in love with a book, I'm probably going to read it first, and then I'm going to listen to it while I'm making dinner, which I totally love. So she talks about putting your fear in your back seat. It's seatbelted. It cannot change. It's there. Yeah. You're feeling the tingles of, oh my God, my mailing list. How big is it? That person over there has a 3 million mailing list and I have 600 or 200. And what does that mean? But it's not in the driver's seat, because in the driver's seat, it stops you in your tracks. The brakes are so strong. So it's listening to your inner Tina or gremlin or worrywart or whatever we want to call it, and saying how much of this is based in truth and how much of this is my mind getting the better of me. The fact that a human being wants to be that's a very French word, an entrepreneur. That is a very French word. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm loving it. Great accent.
And prendre is it to make? I don't want to get into I'm not sure. Entre. We don't have to break down the word. It means working your tush off and making something happen. And we'll talk about AI in a little bit, because offline we talked for a second about that. So what I can say is, if you are listening to this podcast, if you are listening to this episode and all episodes, you care. You have chosen something that matters to you. I loved how you were talking to, I think it's JD, the patent attorney.
Yeah.
And he's like, if you want to make that water bottle with the 2 flaps on the side and that's what you want to do, you're going to get invested. I have 2 right here. I got the pink, I got the green, I got the ice cubes, I've got all the things. You're going to spend hours and hours and hours working on their water bottle. So whatever it is that matters to you, entrepreneur, whether it's, making violins or doing hair or tutoring kids or being a psychotherapist, I consider that, in a sense, being an entrepreneur.
100%.
And when you start, you get to choose. And we see this right now for people in healthcare, and I love it and don't love it. The part I love is, if a psychotherapist finishes grad school and finishes their hours and finishes all the other kerfuffle of things, it's a lot, they can hang out with one of many, 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 many huge organizations that will find them clients. And they will pay them about a quarter of what a psychotherapist should's a hard word, get paid per session, but they will get them all the clients.
Oh,
okay, that was rough. Let's say a third.
yeah. No, I
How's
mean
that?
that's the governing body over, this is the reality in most industries though, right? And I think
Right.
hopefully we're closing that gap. And
Yeah.
but this is why people don't take this risk, because it is like you do have to be hustling for that.
Right. And maybe I can talk. I love counseling and coaching early psychotherapists or people who are wondering if they should become psychotherapists, coaches, etc. And what I say is, clients come one at a time. You cannot see 40 people in a week. You probably cannot see 30. You may not want to see 25. So
emotionally speaking, heck no, I would never be.
Heck no. Heck no. That's right. So the way that we become entrepreneurs, there's many different ways. My model is inch by inch, step by step, be incremental with it. Forgive the term, don't quit your day job, but have that thing that feeds you if you can. And every minute that you are not at that thing, you will be working on your, whatever the thing is, your world of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Now, I have a terrible work ethic when I work for the man. So that means whatever jobs I had as a receptionist and many, many, many restaurants, that's not a good example though, because that was many years ago, but whatever jobs I've had that I did not love or care about, which is terrible to admit, any moment that was downtime was me working on making flyers, working on my website, like doing things that should get a person fired.
I thought you were going to go the other way. I was like 100%. I was a high school teacher and like I would leave, I'd go home and I'd sit in front of YouTube all night learning how to, whether it was coding or creating some weird design on Photoshop. Oh no, like things got sacrificed.
Yeah. Listeners, do not do it this way. I don't want you getting fired. A friend and I had this great conversation where we were talking about someone I knew who worked at front desk somewhere, and they took an hour. They were told to take an hour for lunch, but they didn't get paid that hour. So I was like, so let me get this straight. You're told to take 12 to 1 for lunch. You don't get paid it, and you don't really need an hour for lunch. Why don't you just leave early? Because that's me. I would take 10 minutes for lunch and get my butt out.
Or use that hour to work on your business.
And my friend was like, I tried that and I got fired. And I was like, I'm so sorry you did, but I'm glad to know these things. So what I want to say to the listener to come back on track is do good. If you're going to be naughty, like I was naughty, be slick about it. Do good enough in the work that you do that you don't care about. Do good enough. Do well enough and have that day job. Make the frog sandwiches that she talks about, I think. And you will find you are so impassioned about your work that often your anxiety will start to move into excitement and passion. So again, incrementally, whatever the thing is that you're moving into, listen to your passion, question your anxiety, and use whatever writing materials work for you. And I mean writing like actual notebook writing, the actual notebook where you're writing notes and things. I have filled dozens, and I've saved them all, of notebooks, because I think there's something really soothing, folks, about seeing it and going, this is what matters to me. These are my notes. These are the things, and they're super messy. I don't need to, but I'm like fascinated by all the mess that I'm looking at.
No, I also like love it. I
love it.
Yes.
I love it. This is my new jam. It's a dot book. Dot books are great.
Yes.
So listen to the anxiety that is worthy of being listened to, and all other anxieties question. Don't believe it just because you feel it. The feeling doesn't mean it's actually a fact. Another thing I would say as an actionable for an entrepreneur is have people around you join whatever group exists for your industry. Whether if I'm building the most beautiful water, I always want to say water pitcher, water bottles.
Well, that looks like a pitcher. What you're drinking,
I know,
Rachel,
it's like, pretty insane.
You're not going on your bicycle with that.
My husband got this for me as a joke because it's insanely big and I love drinking my water. So have people around you, because as Anne Lamott, the great writer of Bird by Bird, she's a great writer of fiction and nonfiction. She says this great expression, I'm going to attribute it to her, which is, my mind is like a bad neighborhood. I try never to go there alone. My mind is like a bad neighborhood. I try never to go there alone. If you will stay being an entrepreneur, listening to your anxiety, after a while, you don't know which anxiety is worthy of listening to or not. Having smart people around you who are maybe in the same boat.
I
If you
agree.
can afford a mentor, always get a mentor, but having people around you to check in with what anxiety is real or not.
Rachel, you also just this moment, this is so cool you're saying this, because what you're saying, literally yesterday, I just launched a community, an online community for people that are like what you're talking about on Heartbeat. Have you heard of Heartbeat?
No, I haven't.
So there's a podcast. Long story short, you will love her, Heather Lynn Angel. She, for a living, helps entrepreneurs create communities. And I heard her on the Pat Flynn podcast that is called the Smart Passive Income Podcast. Fantastic for entrepreneurs. She was on it and I wrote her an email and we met, and she's like, you got to go on Heartbeat. So anyways, anyone that's listening, this is like also a plug here, but I've created a community, and this is what we're talking about, is like getting these people together, like finding your people, finding my people. This is so important. And I love that you shared that. I love it.
So thank you. And I love that story. I was a psychotherapist in Philadelphia. I left my town. I'd been licensed for 4 years. So I got licensed in 2000. It's been 23 years that I've been practicing in different ways. But when I moved to California to study, I also do body-centered psychotherapy and dance therapy and expressive arts. I wear a lot of hats.
And this is why I think when I heard you, I was like, we got to have her on.
We got to hang. Yeah, this is good. I moved to San Francisco. It was time to move. I really wanted the expressive art therapy training. What I neglected to research, and I'm glad I neglected to, because then I wouldn't have moved, is that at the time there was not reciprocity. A human being who was licensed in Pennsylvania, which takes years, a human being licensed in Pennsylvania to practice psychotherapy could not at the time transfer. There was no reciprocity for her to have a California license.
Really?
Even though this human being worked her tush off, there was no reciprocity. So I fought that internally with anger and rage and snarkiness and every manner of feeling, until I finally sat down and had to not only take the exam again years later, where I couldn't remember anything.
In the same country.
Actually, the same country. Of course, California does feel like a different country there, but it's the same country. So what I did with my anger and my anxiety, because many people said, you should move back. You will not make it. This is a ton of work. This is the most expensive city. I had everything going against me. And internally, I have a very large whiny person. My anxious person whines. She believes the world doesn't give enough to her. She goes into victim state. So some other part of me was already teaching the dance therapy, learning it and teaching it. By dance therapy, I mean workshops and classes, not psychotherapy. And little by little and inch by inch, I found my way to my California license. And now 15 or 18 or something years later, almost 20 years later, reciprocity finally exists. And I am so happy, because no one else should have to go through that. So I am licensed in Pennsylvania and California. And because of reciprocity, I may get my license in New York and Massachusetts, because I teach on the East Coast quite a bit. So where I'm going with this is to say, get creative. The opposite, if we have such a thing as anxiety, you might think it's calm. And I would say, yes, calm and relax. That is an opposite of anxiety. But I would actually say another opposite of anxiety would be curiosity. Use your because anxiety just freezes us in our tracks. We are completely frozen. We are ambushed. There's nothing we can do. Use your curiosity and say, I'm really nervous. I don't know how I'm going to make it. Everything seems stacked against me. And then every human being is talking about AI. Don't believe what humans are saying when they go negative. Learn things, but walk away. I'm old enough to have lived through Y2K. So when we moved into the new millennium,
we're all gonna die.
New millennium, we're all going to die. Everything terrible is going to happen with computers, and everything's going to be backwards and inside out. And very little of that actually happened. And I think it was, who wrote Huckleberry Finn? This happens a lot now with words.
Jane?
Say it.
I'm like Mark Twain.
Mark Twain. Thank you.
I
We're
was
good.
like, but
We
then
don't
I
need
got, when
technology.
you
We have
second
our, we
guess
don't even need.
yourself.
So it was Mark Twain, I believe, I'm going to ascribe this to, who said, in my life, many, many, many terrible things happened to me, a few of which actually happened. Okay. I said that poorly, but you get it. In my life, many terrible things happened, a few of which actually happened.
Yeah.
So we are imagining the worst all the time, because that inner
Yeah.
threat system has to. We're imagining the
Yeah.
worst left and right. And it's not actually happening, but our nervous mind will think it is. Also, I want to be very honest about friendship. I have amazing friends, and I do not share with most of them. Let me back up, because my life now is very different. If I can go back into those times that anxiety was ripe for me, I cannot remember. So I will just say, for the most part, be very discerning who you share your struggles with. Many humans, rightly so, believe in a very strong 9-to-5 culture and would never become entrepreneurs for awesome reasons. They are not meant to be that.
Yeah.
So be very much expecting humans to say, what's your plan B? Which is awful to hear. What happens if you fail? Another one, awful to hear. Choose wisely when you share. And you'll also have this great cadre of people who you are with, who are also in it together with you, and you embolden one another. You will have a gratitude buddy. Another thing that is a beautiful antidote to anxiety is, and I hope it doesn't sound trite, is gratitude. Going to bed every night. This is another actionable. And writing down 3 things you're grateful for. I'm grateful I got to do this podcast. I'm grateful the weather's gorgeous. I'm grateful for the clients I got to see today. They're, really beautiful people I care about. I'm grateful that I have work. The more you do that, the more good that comes. I don't mean to say it's as simple as just say thank you and be grateful, and
Yes.
things will come. It's hard work too.
The 5-minute journal has been very much where I fall into in the anxious parts of life. And I think so. If we can just take a moment and identify. So you've worked how many years? 25 plus years working with people around all sorts of things, but really it comes down to, I think, how do you define anxiety? And I love that anxiety, like I love now, I think for visually, this is so good for our listeners, because sometimes we have to actually, like, I love it broken down, like when there's anxiety, whenever this feelings, when Tina, whatever we're calling it, I love the part that you can like almost physically like pull it apart and say, over here is the good anxiety that's getting me out of bed really fast, and I'm jumping into my studio and I'm going to show up and do something uncomfortable. And then there's the anxiety that cripples us, and we can go into the rabbit hole of being like, oh my gosh, I'm drowning. Why does bad thing happen after? And you talked about this, because I do see this a lot, and I know I fall into this sometimes. Is the victimizing, we think, oh, we're always a victim. And I also think with people with ADHD, we also don't allow ourselves to be a victim very long, because we forget. We forgot that we were a victim. So it plays both ways, but we also can hyperbolize everything. So, we're circling in different worlds. But if we can just identify, like, I love that anxiety is healthy, just like failure, right? Like failure is, I always say fail fast. And maybe because
like that. I like that.
ADHD brain, failure is good when you fail fast, learn, and like you said, don't sit in that space, be curious. But I just feel like, I don't know, this is becoming such a crippling part of our world.
Yeah.
I read, someone posted, a really successful musician being like, she talked about having panic attacks every time she went on tour, but she's adored. People love her. But like, it doesn't matter. Getting fame, getting rich, getting all these things, you still, and it's like you said, in your mind, and it's up to us. No one else can separate the good anxiety, the bad anxiety. It's gotta be, and I've done 8 years of working with a therapist on cognitive behavioral therapy. I love it. So this is so something that, like, I'm constantly trying to understand how our brains, like how some people, hide their anxieties, or because I've had conversations like, oh, I'm super anxious. You're like, you are? And they're like, yeah, this is what's going on behind the scenes. You're like, what? Like, why didn't you tell me? And then we could have done this differently. Because I'm on the other side. Like, I'll tell you right now, I've had a really postpartum, super ups and downs, right? But I talk about it and I'm open about it. And then I have people that are in my corner that like give me help and feedback and stuff. But what about the people that are suffering silently? How do you define anxiety for them? What is it that they can do without being able to, if they can't afford, having that mentor, having that person, what can they do on their own?
I'll start with a story.
I love stories.
everything. I love everything you're saying, Claire. You are so wonderful in your realness and your authenticity. And your listeners are so blessed to have you because they want to know, oh, 8 years, she does that. She believes in it. And they kind of look up to you. And that's just so good that you share. I love that mental health stuff is like out there in the world now. Like we go to therapy. It ain't such a secret.
Well, it's kind of like, to me, it's the equivalent of like, well, I go to the dentist. Right. If I'm going to have someone clean my teeth, why isn't someone cleaning my mind?
That's right.
Like getting me like
rub it, baby. Early whites. I had a practice. Where did I put my sign? It's not here. I had this big Bliss psychotherapy sign. I had a practice before the pandemic in this beautiful building. I now have a different practice in a much more fun building in the Castro. That's the gay district of SF that is colorful and lovely and whatnot. Oh, so
I want to go.
It's please.
Go on the bucket list when I do. Yes, we're going to have an IRL session.
Yes, that'd be great. And one day there was a letter at my door, handwritten. Oh my God. And I opened it up and I could tell by the writing, maybe a little older. The person was a little older and it said, dear Miss Fleischman, I could really use some bliss in my life right now. I'm an older man and I have had a really hard life and my father hated me and, I was beaten and I can't afford therapy, but I saw your sign, Miss Fleischman. I saw your sign and I thought it wouldn't hurt to write to you because I'm really suffering. So I first my tears fell, of course. And then he signed it and I called the number. This is very much a landline person. We're not going to be texting, right? No. I called the number and it rang and rang and rang and rang. So I was like, okay, that's not going to happen. So I wrote him back and I said, dear Mr. Dandelion. Yeah. Dandelion's dear Mr. Dandelion.
that is beautiful.
I'm so glad you're reaching out. I'm also so sad to hear what you've been through. I'm a psychotherapist and it's true, kind of expensive because I've been working for a really long time. I know some resources and I'm going to list them here where you can get very low fee psychotherapy. I also have another idea. In addition to that is why don't you write to me whenever you're feeling some feelings, some pain and suffering. Let me know how you're doing. Obviously, if you're feeling really awful, I want to make sure you have someone you can call me. And again, I can set you up with low fee therapy. But if it's okay with you, I'd be more than happy to be your pen pal. I don't know why that word came to me. We have been pen paling since definitely before the pandemic. So 4.5 years. And we write to each other religiously. His letters are quite long and I write, every one of mine is a card, like a really beautiful card. And I asked him if it would be okay to, how did I put it? Let my husband know of his existence because it's not a typical psychotherapeutic relationship. And he said, I would love to sort of offer my best wishes to your husband. And so now in the letters, he's like, dear Rachel and Ben, I'm thinking of you both. And one day out of the blue, I knew from his letters that he volunteers at a food giveaway. We have many wonderful, in addition to the poop and pee that people think of when they think of San Francisco right now, there's a lot of bad press. We also have, there's a lot of wonderful things in our city. So I was with my husband and I got out of the car and I asked for Mr. Dandelion and they pointed to him and I said, Mr. Dandelion, it's Rachel Fleischman, your pen pal. And we just hugged and hugged and hugged. And I just said, I didn't, I hope it didn't overwhelm you that I'm seeing you out of the blue, but I just wanted to say what your letters mean to me. And, thank you. And I said, I love that I have a pen pal. So we continue to write and He has extreme anxiety. This is someone who, won't take buses. And, this is someone who has been through a lot of trauma, severe trauma. Maybe hasn't had a regular job in his life, has had so much trauma. What I want to say is there is help for everyone. I'm not saying, everyone will get letters every week or month from a therapist, but I will say for the human beings who are suffering, there are resources, and so many of them, thank goodness, from talk lines where people answer 24/7 to a new 988 number. So no one ever has to call 911. Well, someone's having an emergency, but if someone's having a mental health moment, they can call 988 and not deal with the police. Sorry, you're in Canada, so it may be 999. What?
Yeah, well,
is it 911 for the police where you are?
Yes,
is it different?
Police is 911 as well.
Okay, they're probably just a lot nicer because they're Canadian. That was a funny, silly Canadian joke.
What? I have amazing American friends and a great. There's no judging over here.
Yes. I just joke about that because
I know
we love to say that Canadians
apologize a lot.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're very kind people. I want to share about 3 other little mini vignettes to help with anxiety. Bill Hader, who is on SNL and has been in many movies and is in the show Barry on HBO and is a brilliant comic and writer and actor, had such severe panic attacks on SNL that he could not see. And he'd be doing, you will watch him. You will never see this, folks. You will always see the brilliant Bill Hader who looks out of this world funny, who's doing every kind of impersonation. We just don't know what's going on inside the nervous system. Yeah. And what I want to say about anxiety that's not great news, but I will come back to great news in a moment, is the higher the stakes, sometimes the higher the anxiety. The higher the stakes. So when I was teaching small workshops, it's kind of like theater. If you're doing community theater, you have a certain level of anxiety. I don't know what happens when Broadway happens. So the bigger the anxiety, the more seatbelts we get for it, and the more support we get for it, the more things we have to do for it. And sometimes that includes medicine. And thank God for it. Yeah. So the higher the stakes, for me, leading workshops in front of hundreds of people, all of them very scholarly women at the Women's Center at Omega Institute, was much scarier than a fun dance or bliss class with 15 people on a panel with women who were authors, and everybody is, very scholarly and learned. And then they point to me and go, Rachel, so you dance your bliss. What's that about? And it just sounded so like fluffy and I was humiliated. But at the same time, let's have some levity about it. Yeah. We can have levity about our terror, anxiety, worry. If we can have some levity, we do not die from panic attacks. Yeah. We do not have heart attacks from them, though it will feel like it. Yeah. And we hit it with many things. We hit it with guided imagery and meditation. Yeah. We hit it when we need to with medicine. Yeah. And when we don't have money, when my father was dying and I had no money and was working for $5 an hour, and I needed to see a doc because I was scared to leave my house, I went to the neighborhood mental health center with homeless folks sitting right next to me. I am no better or worse than they are, and found a doc who would see me. And because my income, was low, and because I knew which zip code, you had to go sort of within your zip code, I got to experience something both a little bit awful. It's a little demoralizing sometimes to sit with a doc. As a psychiatrist is not warm and soft and sweet the way a psychotherapist might be. It's a very medical model, but I'll never forget. How are you doing, Rachel? She said on one of our appointments. And I said, I'm going to this place I've always wanted to go. I'm going to visit San Francisco. I mean, I wasn't someone who traveled a lot because there wasn't the money. And she said, oh my God, that bridge, Rachel, that bridge. It is so beautiful. And I thought, wow, this is something I keep hearing when I tell people I'm going to, again, this is,
that came up today too. It was on my desktop.
Yeah. So we make change in our lives step by step, and anxiety is part of us. It is part of our nervous system. Sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it does not. Yeah. i.e. waking up in the middle of the night with a pounding heart. Hate it. Awful, terrible feelings. Sometimes it's hormonal. We move through different cycles as people. We move through menopause. Some people move through what they call andropause. If they're male, we move through, I was just reading up on postpartum depression, and I was so angry with the body. Like, when a human being needs to feel at her best to feed her child and stay well, she can fall
I
prey
was
to
angry at
very.
her body.
What's that?
I love that you said I was angry at the body.
I was angry at the body. I was like, what are you talking about? Nervous system. The woman needs to feed her child and stay alive. And because postpartum can go into a brief psychosis. I mean, people can feel so off.
Jumping in for the listeners, because I think I like the balance of sharing, and you said that. And for the listeners, that's the thing, is like, I work with a lot of moms and a lot of women, and that was something that I decided too that was important for me, is like having therapy. But you said medication. I've been on Cipralex for 5-6 years. It's a game changer, and I think it's like, I think something that has always helped is like, fill your toolbox. Someone's toolbox, one person's toolbox will have, these gambit of things versus this. I'm just doing a plug also, because this is from a local store, but this has been game changer. My best friend walks by, it's deodorant.
So cute. It just looks cute.
Yang sweet orange, but talking about sensory things. So she would walk by, and I was like, every time you walk by in the room, I feel a sense of calm. And
your
then
armpits give me calm.
Yeah, I was like, what is it? Because I said, it feels like my armpits, since breastfeeding, literally a dying onions in my armpit. And it's hormones. So she was like, guess what? She's heading to Copenhagen today, out of her way, went and dropped this in the mailbox, because this is one of my comps. So yes, taking Cipralex.
This is what we do.
But it could be how do you yang
Lang.
Yeah. And
it's a mix of Western and Eastern. It is a mix of great TV that makes us laugh. It's a mix of nature.
Yes.
I have pretty severe seasonal depression. So I learned.
I didn't mean to do this.
Let's hear it for seasonal. So I've learned my husband calls it chasing the sun. I'm going to call it stretching the day.
I love that.
Means, and it's better here than it was in Philly, but still, I don't love short days. So I go out at sunset, which again is earlier than I would like it to be. And I get that in my eyes, and I'm giving information to my body that there is still more day left. And then I make my evenings very special, and I cozy up, and I honor that it is the winter, and that nighttime means baking, and it's a symbol of cozy. So we hit it with many things. There is no shame in the game. Nothing wrong with taking medicine when a person needs to. I do have one issue, and I want to make this gripe, which is psychiatry. It's on a different track, but I think it's an important statement. Psychiatry, private psychiatry, has become unbelievably expensive. So people avoid seeing a psychiatrist, understandably. Yeah. Therefore, many human beings get their antidepressants from their primary doctor. There is nothing wrong with that. But we need to make psychiatry more affordable, because many human beings need a checkup every now and then with a psychiatrist, because I've become like a psychiatrist in my practice. Every one of my clients who takes medicine, I yell at them when they tell me that they forget to take their medicine. They take it at different times of the day. They drink too much sometimes. Another thing I'll hear a lot is, oh, I ran out 3 weeks ago. I just keep forgetting to refill it. These are the most amazing, organized, successful, awesome people, and they just have a lot going on in their world. Having that appointment with a psychiatrist where you can do the self-education yourself, though I don't love Dr. Google. You need to take the meds every day at the same time, try to avoid drinking, get out in the sunlight, and my biggest pet peeve, do not go off the meds on your own willy-nilly. It is so not good for you. And we do this, but we do these things because we have, as people, ambivalence about medicine, because we've been shamed. We've been given misinformation that it will dull us. Yeah. We've been given misinformation that we'll become addicted to it. I'm not being, don't really want to get too much into a pro or con of medicine. What I know is when our nervous system needs a support and a kickstart, I'm so grateful that medicine is there for us. So that was that. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I love that, it's our toolbox. Everybody has different tools in the toolbox. And for me, it might be this. my armpit cream.
Let me tell you, every time I come to dance class, I wear a little spritz of this beautiful perfume, and it's heavenly. It's not cloying or strong.
Yeah.
We need sensorial things. And that's another piece I would say to listeners around anxiety is, please don't like pull your hair out or pick at your skin if possible. Try to have not just a fidget spinner. I mean, take up knitting, because people are, unfortunately, I don't want to say mutilating themselves, but people are getting anxious and doing things that aren't kind to themselves, unaware. It's almost a subconscious. Learn knitting, take up a art form, learn calligraphy, write a card to a friend, garden, pot a plant. There needs to be more going on with these wonderful hands than we're doing. So I could go into many different spikes of sort of ways that we can work with anxiety, but being in a sensorial experience is something you'll learn in a guided imagery for anxiety, is to notice 3 sounds. Sometimes I ask people as they close their eyes just to notice the light, to notice sensation, to do a body scan. Another thing everyone can learn that's very either free or affordable is mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR. It's a mouthful. And that is one of the first scientifically proven hospital-based, it started, meditative systems developed by Jon Kabat-Zinn. And his book, Full Catastrophe Living, is one of my favorites. It's about this thick. So it's this thick as a brick. And any page, it can be your Bible, any page you turn, he will explain something about the ways of anxiety where you will just sit and nod. It's a book that's been around. It's a classic. It's very readable. He's developed years ago mindfulness-based stress reduction. Mindfulness, by the way, for the listeners, simply means being aware of your thoughts on purpose without judgment. Noticing I'm having an anxious thought, noticing the meta of the thought without hating on myself for having it. And because I'm a body-oriented person, the other thing for anxiety is move your body, stretch your body, really live from the neck down, not just lifting weights and like muscling it, which is great too. But learn Qigong, learn a few movements that you can come back to, because movement is a ritual, and anxiety doesn't do well in ritual. There's something very soothing about having a ritual for ourselves. It's very soothing. If you think about any yoga class you've ever taken, any martial arts class you've taken or seen, any movement system in the world, it's all ritual. From the time you put on your running shoes and your headphones on and close the door, and there's a really sweet ritual for the body. Yeah.
My husband's a professional marathoner, so
that's amazing.
He's out. Yeah, that is a ritual. And I really think this is what I really love what you've been sharing today, Rachel, is like, I think there's so much work. So like you said, there's in the toolbox, let's say, we have all these people that we can tap into, from psychotherapists or getting a psychiatrist, whether it's a diagnosis or the medication, whatever it is. But I love what you say today, is that it really is within ourselves. Like, we get to decide, like, are we the victim? And I know for me, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. One of the things I remember my therapist was saying, because I had quit my full-time job, I had a burnout, I was trying to do 104 million things. And I remember that one of his suggestions was like, just and I already did this, commentate your life. He's like, everything you're doing, tell the story as you're doing. Okay, I'm going to grab this water because I think the mindfulness of recognizing is almost stage 2. Like, I had to start, and I naturally would always commentate, but I had to recognize how I was living my commentary. Like, okay, I'm sitting outside for this, or, I'm like, I would get to the point I'd hyper focus so much I wouldn't even go to the bathroom. It's like, Claire, you have to stop what you're doing in transitions. Like, transitions for me are like the most painful thing ever, to try and go from one to the next thing.
You're not alone. You're not alone.
Yeah. It's just, it's almost like, and so when I commentate, then I have to recognize it's coming. And then it's not as scary if I just have to try and do something right away.
I love that. I think that's very, very, you have a very bright therapist. That's really wise.
I mean, yes, he's
A
amazing
wise
and you're
person is a
amazing,
wise.
but I wanted to know how, because I feel like after I started years and years of really being careful how I would play out my day and talk to myself how it was going through, then I got to start changing the narrative, reframing, being
That's the
like,
word. That's the word. You can commentate,
yeah,
and your commentary might be waking up and I could say, oh, look at this awful city. There's pigeon poo on my window.
exactly.
Another foggy day in this overpriced city. I'm walking to my breakfast. Oh, my husband, there's only 3 Raisin Bran flakes left. My cat's not into me anymore. And I can commentate away.
Yeah.
Or I can say, okay, I felt off for a moment. I'm coming back. I'm
Yeah.
coming back. Oh my God, the sun's shining. How funny that is. How beautiful. So watching the narrative, because often we are not reliable narrators. We are seeing
No.
things not as they are. We're seeing things as we are.
Yes.
We
And
are seeing everything from our own lens. And you
yeah.
can see 2 people who went to Tahiti for a trip, and they can come back and I can say to one, how was it? And they can say it was awful and it was raining every day and I can't believe it, and my hair got frizzy and I could never leave the hotel. And the other would say, this was amazing. I caught up on reading. The rain was so pure and beautiful and it cooled everything down and I loved it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I say to people, be who you are. The second one might sound a little bit like too joyous. That's fine.
Yeah.
But notice your commentary and notice how you feel with it. And I think it's great. You married someone who works with speed and endurance, and I would imagine a lot of math. I don't know if they want to keep making it faster with marathons. It's not a world I know,
It's
but
by
I
the
would imagine you're always
very
right.
it's a
It's
calculated
fascinating. Right. It's fascinating to me.
discipline at its
But
highest form.
right. Right. And I see a lot of that in San Francisco. We have a lot of runners. I'm not one of them, but I think that's great.
Me neither.
And I think you love being alive. You have a massive life force. You have a massive appetite for life. You're so excited by the work that you do. I'm sure you got burned out because you worked your butt off at what you used to do.
I was a high school teacher.
Yeah, sure. So you were the best teacher.
I loved it. But
you loved it till you couldn't do it anymore because you were exhausted. So I think sometimes, what is it like to have what I call active rest, where you just play with that jigsaw puzzle and do nothing else but that jigsaw puzzle and listening. We have to be a little careful with anxiety because we are living in a time of optimize, where we're listening to books on Blinkist in 15 minutes on double speed, and we can listen to 5 a day. And I'm guilty of this myself because I love learning. I love reading and I love learning.
Yes, me too.
But sometimes we need to fast from our gadgets. There's a lot of statistics that show the more we are pressing and touching and being with our phones, the less joyful and in the moment we are. So I just ask your listeners, whatever your relationship is, not here to judge it, but notice if it's offering you joy, because going on airplane mode when we can't, you're a mom, you have responsibilities, but when we can go in airplane mode and shut everything down, that is a very good reset for our nervous system.
Well, it's so cool that you said that, because I think all these things are coming together. Something I learned, and I believe San Francisco's at altitude, is it a little bit? Is that why? I'm so curious. Doesn't matter. The point is that my husband did say something. He said, the greatest recovery, how you become a better runner, isn't always the running. It was actually the recovery. So people go run in altitude. And he said, and he said, the altitude, it's not when you're running, you're not getting the benefits when you're running in altitude. It's actually when you're sleeping. And so you become the better runner because of the recovery period. And I think sometimes I kind of take that as an anecdote, or something that I try and apply to my life, because I want to go 100% all day long if I could. I said when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a vampire because I heard vampires don't need to sleep. And I was like, I wanted my whole life the feeling that never I had to sleep. My parents well, you're not a vampire. And so it is when you talk about active rest, for a lot of us, for entrepreneurs, it's very hard to insert that into your day.
Yeah,
it's really hard. It's really hard for most people. If you're an entrepreneur, you are driven in a certain capacity, and you sometimes don't realize the rest could be the most healing part of your day.
I mean, luckily we have aging on our side, because you will need to rest as you age. Your body will let you know.
Yeah.
Caffeine is great, but what caffeine does is just quiets the adenosine, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, the hormone that makes us tired, which we have. It just quiets that temporarily. It all comes back.
Just makes you jittery.
It's a really wild one because it has about a 6-hour half-life. So I say to people, if caffeine is your jam and your body metabolizes it well, great. Please make sure you end at 1 p.m. because if it's a 6-hour half-life and you're having a really good cup of somewhere in Canada and somewhere in San Francisco, somewhere in Canada, that didn't sound right. Somewhere in your lovely town.
Oh, Kingston, Ontario. No.
Kingston, Ontario.
Hey, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, still learning. Still, we're just getting to know each other.
I'll just be the Canadian today. That's okay.
Yeah. But if we're in Kingston or we're in SF and we want a good cup of coffee, that cup of coffee is going to have upwards of 110 mgs of caffeine because it's made so beautifully. And that's strong. So if there's a 6-hour half-life, that means in 6 hours, that 110 is now down to 55 mgs of caffeine, which is still decent. 6 hours from them, which might be when you're closing up day, it's still going to have half of 55. So it's still going to have somewhere close to 30 mgs. So folks, notice what your nervous system needs.
Yeah.
And active rest can be really fun because I do think knitting or making something for that entrepreneur, for us, for the person who is doing a lot, can still feel nourishing in that way. Also, micro naps. I was saying that on another podcast. 17 or 18 minutes is all you need. That's all you need. But
I love, okay, I'm glad because yes, my dad, I'm one of 8 kids, and my dad, he was the king of those micro naps. 10 minutes, and you're like, did he have a full night's sleep?
Did you say I'm one of 8 kids?
Yes.
Oh my God. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Well,
Wow.
like that's where the resourcefulness, you learn how to do things on your own.
And where are you in the birth order?
I'm the second oldest.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Are any multiples, any twins in there?
No, we are all single.
Okay.
Yeah. I love it. It has taught me more. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
That's
Because
right.
my sisters are my 4 best friends built in. They're stuck with me forever.
So cool.
And 3 brothers I love to death too, but it's nice having your sisters. Yeah.
I'm so touched. My husband's one of 6 and he is a middle triplet. So his parents, before he existed, his parents had 3 little boys and they wanted a girl, and mom got pregnant and had 3 more boys. I just got to see a photo of the ultrasound the other day from back in the day, and it was really magical. So
wow,
he's my 1 in a million.
Wow.
We should probably close up. Yeah, like what is
this is
one more question.
We're like, so for all the listeners, I'm sorry, but this is one of those podcast episodes where I just got lost into the conversation and felt super moved. And I think we've gotten more than a taste of Rachel's incredible, not only experience, wisdom, your stories of what you've gone through. I think the best thing is like, okay, people are going to want, after listening to you, they're going to want more. Where can we take the rest? Where can we continue this conversation for them? Do you have something where we can direct them to?
Sure. I can share with you my information, which has some resources. I'm also really touched if someone emails me I've made, audio. So I am at 2 websites. One is simply called blisscounseling.com, but we spell counseling with 1 L, my dear ones, not with 2. But anyway,
I know that's blisscounseling.com.
So we have blisscounseling.com. And then the other website, and they both have different resources. The other website is dancingyourbliss.com. And I want to also say that I have found very useful for anxiety the deep work of Tara Brach, TaraBrach.org. And she is a Buddhist psychologist and the author of, I think, 4 bestsellers. One is called Radical Acceptance.
Yes, I was going to say, yes.
Very powerful. And it came out in 2004, so almost 20 years ago.
Was that 20 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think her work will speak to any human being who has felt worry, who has felt anxiety. And she uses a process called RAIN, having to do with work. Anyway, she has a lot of great resources on her website, more than you would expect, and all of them top quality. So
amazing. This is great because we will share after in the notes for this episode. And we will obviously turn this into a YouTube. It sounds, I feel I'm dating myself here, but we'll have all these amazing resources that you've provided, because I definitely know this is, no matter who you are, we experience forms of this in one capacity or another. And I hope that the end of this podcast with Rachel Fleischman, did I say that right? Fleischman. She has given us an amazing toolbox for each one of us to take with us as we go into this new exciting chapter. So thank you so much for being on the Small Town Entrepreneur Podcast. We are just absolutely delighted that you gave us this time. And we'll see you next time. Hopefully we'll get you back.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure and an honor.